the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Let's go to Jodi now in Las Vegas. Good morning, Jodi.
Good morning, Patrick. I have a question about the papacy. I was speaking with a Protestant friend, and I was telling him about, St. Peter, he's the rock of the church that Jesus Christ started, and he was technically the first pope. And, he just had all these objections and why the Catholic Church is not right and all this other stuff. So I said, well, where have you learned all of these objections? What's teaching you all of this? And I know this and that. And I'm like, well, it sounds like you've learned everything you know about the Catholic Church from like a society that really does not like the Catholic Church. Okay. So I said, if you really want to know the true church, and this doesn't come from a religious standpoint, but I just said, logically, if I wanted to know what the true church was that Jesus Christ started, I'd have to at least logically be a member of a church that's at least 2,000 years old. Does the Catholic Church, do we have the lineage all lined out where every pope can be traced all the way back to St. Peter?
Yeah, we sure do. So let me give you a few things. This is one of those seemingly powerful arguments that is utterly flimsy and just sort of disintegrates upon further scrutiny. In fact, I'll start with this. I have, over the years of doing a lot of apologetics and public speaking, fielding questions constantly from live audiences. And this is going back, 36 years now, whatever. And there's so many different arguments against the papacy. Oh, Jesus didn't mean that Peter was the rock, even though he changed his name to rock. He meant, Peter's a little pebble and Jesus is the big rock. That, or Peter never went to Rome, or Peter was just one among the apostles. He had no special place, or Jesus called Peter Satan, therefore how could Peter be the pope? Or St. Paul was more important than St. Peter, and on and on and on. There's just so many of these arguments. Now, if you're not familiar with the responses to those arguments, and most people aren't, they will seem formidable, but they are not formidable. They're easy to refute. So, Jodi, what I did years ago, maybe 20 years ago or so, is I gathered all of those main arguments that I had to deal with over and over and over again, and I wrote a book called Pope Fiction, Answers to 30 Myths and Misconceptions About the Papacy. And every single one of those standard, typically Protestant arguments against the Peter from the Greek or from the biblical text or from history, or, what about Pope Honorius? What about the bad popes? What about Pope Joan? What about, it's endless, these different arguments against the papacy. So I wrote a single book that encompasses all of the arguments. And I respond with the Bible when that's the need, and history, the facts of history, etc. So if you're and I'm not trying to sell you a book, believe me. You can pick one up cheap. You can pick up a used copy of Pope Fiction on Amazon, and there's no money that's going to go to me. But I would encourage you to get that book, because I'm certain that whatever arguments this gentleman is raising with you are answered decisively in this book. And the reason I say that is because the answers are decisive. The proof is overwhelming. The historical record is overwhelming. You mentioned a moment ago, is there any sort of pedigree, or do we have any list? Yeah, it's as easy as just going on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia is not known to be a particularly rigorous scholarly endeavor, but it does contain good information. And if you just look up list of the popes. And it's sourced so you can see St. Peter, you can see when he lived, where he lived, a little bit of information about him, followed by St. Linus. Where did he live? When did he become pope? When did he die? St. Anacletus, St. Clement I, St. Evaristus, St. Alexander, St. Sixtus I, St. Telesphorus, St. Hyginus. And so it just goes on. And by the time you get to St. Hyginus, you're only in the year 136. So that's the 9th pope in line from St. Peter, and we possess this information primarily from the documents of the early church. So take a look, for example, at St. Polycarp, for example. But these were contemporaries in the 2nd century, and they said, look, these are the popes. In fact, in one letter, it said that we don't even need to establish who the various bishops are among all the different churches. It's sufficient to simply say, here are the bishops of Rome, all the way back to St. Peter. And this was in the mid second century. So they were very well aware of who the popes were, what their names were. Now, is there absolute detailed information about all these early popes? Well, no, there wasn't, because the church was under severe persecution. So many of those records, to the extent there were any, were very minimal. In some cases, we know quite a bit more. And certainly as we go into the 4th century, after the persecutions began to let up and eventually go away, then there's a really detailed chronology of the popes and their names and when they were born and what they did and so forth. So even just something as simple as Wikipedia can provide those details for you. The Catholic Encyclopedia online can give you much, much, much more. And that, by the way, is a rigorously scholarly resource. Just look up Catholic Encyclopedia online and you'll find it. Look up popes. It's typically pronounced papacy, not papacy. I'm not sure why people say that, but papacy is a well-documented article in the Catholic Encyclopedia online. So, I mean, if there were time, Jodi, I could shoot down each and every one of these arguments. We just don't have that kind of time.
No, your recommendation is great. Well, we'll look at that another time. I'll call back. And thank you so much for your time.
If you do read that and you get a chance to digest it and you want to call back, I'd love to hear from you. You can join me by listening to The Patrick Madrid Show on the Relevant Radio app, live each weekday at 8 to 11 a.m. And thanks for listening.